I'd recently finished a 3,000-year-old text, the Odyssey, written by Greek poet Homer. If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, the setup for Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey, is going to seem very familiar. This is the ultimate Return of the King story. Odysseus is the rightful king, but while he's missing, these corrupt, lazy suitors move into his home and try to seduce his wife Penelope. They disrespect his family, eat his food and bleed his place dry. To be honest, it doesn't seem all that different from what we see today. You've got politicians arguing about who's more right or suited to the role, while everyday people feel like the honesty and standard of true leadership has gone out the window. The whole story relies on the idea that the dead wasteland needs its rightful leader back to restore and replenish the culture, like Simba does in The Lion King. There is a slow burn tension up to this in the book, so it'd be interesting to see how Nolan builds this before the good king finally returns to take back what is rightfully his. The sheer scale of time involved in the Odyssey means that the stakes for this film are absolutely huge. If you've read the Iliad or seen the film Troy, you'll know that Odysseus fought in the Trojan War, which lasted for 10 long years. But by the time the Odyssey starts, Odysseus has been trying to get back home for another 10 years. He spent the majority of that stuck on an island with the nymph goddess Calypso. That means he's been away from his wife, his son and his home for 20 years. When you see Matt Damon on the screen, he's not just a tired soldier, he's been dealing with 2 decades of grief and desperation. It makes his struggle to get back to a normal, quiet life something we can all understand. Nolan has taken on a huge task, and it'll be interesting to see how he has condensed this epic drama into a 3-hour film. The Trojan horse is probably the most famous image of the Trojan War, but Homer barely mentions it at all. So where does the story come from? Homer actually mentions it here for the first time in the Odyssey, but even then it's just a quick flashback from a blind poet who sings a song praising Odysseus for coming up with a master plan. The original Greek epic poem that actually detailed the step-by-step destruction of Troy has been completely lost to history. That means the oldest surviving description we actually have of the fall of Troy comes from the Roman poet Virgil, which was written 800 years after the Odyssey. It's a much darker, terrifying version of the events that happen, one that I imagine Nolan has taken influence from. You might have seen the 10-minute preview trailer of this, but if you haven't, then you're in for a treat. There's a massive debate online lately about the specific translation that Nolan used to script the Odyssey. There are plenty of versions out there. I read the Robert Fagles translation because I heard it stayed true to the original text but held onto that high poetry, and that was exactly the kind of inspiration I was after. It also has nice rough pages. But there's also a lot of talk around Emily Wilson's modern version, which is reportedly the version that Nolan has scripted from. Some critics feel her translation injects too many modern progressive ideas into it, while others argue that it just makes a tough, ancient text accessible for people today. Whether that's right or wrong, who knows, but I admire anyone who's spent the time to take on such a massive task. I guess it just comes down to personal preference. I haven't read Wilson's version, so I can't comment on that or know what Nolan may have taken from this. There was one worry for me from the trailer though. A lot of the language in the clips seems quite lowbrow and slangy compared to the epic, poetic language that you get in the original poem. I get the decision behind this, but for me, dumbing something down for the audience has the opposite effect. You lower the quality while at the same time treating the audience like they're idiots, so hopefully this doesn't happen. At the end of the day, every translator leaves their own bit of bias on the page. I just hope Nolan lets the raw story speak for itself. The ancient world already has its own complex, messy politics built right into it. It doesn't need us forcing our own modern arguments onto it, turning a great story into political propaganda that we see so much in Hollywood films today. That to me is an art. I don't think art needs to persuade you. It should be a light on a mountainside showing the way. The hardest thing for us to wrap our heads around as children of modernity when going to see Nolan's The Odyssey is how the Greek gods actually work. We have adopted a very scientific, materialist view of the world now, but Homer's audience genuinely believed that the gods were actively involved in their day-to-day lives. Every storm at sea, every stroke of luck, or every bad mistake was genuinely the result of a chess match between the immortals. You can feel that divine presence through the whole book. It almost acts on two different levels, with both of them in constant dialogue. My main worry is that Nolan may treat the gods as something purely psychological or overly scientific, which would strip away the scale and the depth of it. This is not a godless society, and it is not a godless story. The Greek myths hold so much ancient wisdom, and if this is not taken seriously, then the whole story will collapse in on itself. I'm very interested to see how he represents this and how he balances the human ego drama of Odysseus and the suitors, with the grand terrifying theodrama of the gods with Athena and Poseidon pulling the strings. I've seen some early reviews come through, one from Tom Holland from the Rest is History podcast, and he held high praise. So I'm sure Nolan has done a great job, as always, and I can't wait to see it. That is the end of my 5-part guide to the Odyssey. Let me know your final predictions for the film in the comments, or check out my page on my YouTube channel, SidCooper_art, for the full series. If you're already watching on YouTube, hit subscribe or click the bell for future videos. Thank you.